looking into the concerns surrounding that large fault or crack that's in the ground that recently opened up near and behind that shopping center.
But we're not sure how quickly the ground is moving here. The officer told us he heard the crack grows further apart by 2 inches every day. Now, the surveyor from the EADS group we spoke with says it's moving, but very gradually. He didn't say there was any immediate danger or that part of Brush Mountain would break off and come crashing down.
Deep floodwaters threaten the deep south tonight. A wave of intense thunderstorms is rumbling from Louisiana to Alabama.
Now to these severe storms that are slamming the south. Look at this, from Texas to Alabama, tornadoes, high winds, flooding and hail. And today, tens of millions of people are facing the threat of more wild weather.
In East Texas this morning, a grandmother and her 4 grandchildren drowned when a flash flood hit their home.
Other areas across the south and southwest have taken a beating over the last several days, and this morning the area is bracing again for what could be more severe weather.
Horrific scene playing out tonight. An entire city evacuated as a raging wildfire now moves in, devastating the heart of Canada's oil-producing region. Terrified families rushing away on the one road out of town. The flames right alongside them, leaving everything behind.
It's already devoured an area bigger than Manhattan as tens of thousands are fleeing the flames.
Hospital patients and homeowners flooded the road south. An unprecedented exodus of nearly 90,000 people.
The largest wildfire evacuation in Canada's history.
Authorities said the fire has destroyed 1,600 buildings, and now it's threatening Fort McMurray's airport and communities well south of the town.
Firefighters call this hell on earth. The scene apocalyptic.
Would cause a mass fish kill in a lake in Haikou city in South China's Hainan province. Images of workers collecting the dead fish were posted on social media.
They were first spotted on Wednesday, and sanitation workers scooped up over 20 tons of them within 5 hours. It's estimated that the total number might be about 50 tons.
The death toll in the massive landslide in southeast China's Fujian Province has risen to 34. More people are still missing and 14 survivors have been hospitalized. The military reopened the major road link to the outside. Heavy rain in the area has hampered rescue work. It also led Beijing to issue a landslide alert for southern China.
In the meantime, local meteorological authorities have announced a red alert for torrential rains at the highest level of its kind.
The Solomons are under siege by the sea. An alarming new study finds 5 Pacific islands have disappeared beneath the waves. More are sinking fast. It's happening here in the island's nation about 1,000 miles northeast of Australia. Scientists blame climate change. The ocean surrounding the low-lying Solomons is now rising about a 1/4 inch every year. That's double the global average. Powerful trade winds make the problem worse, creating intense waves that crash into fragile shorelines. Of 33 islands tracked over 7 decades, water has washed away 5. 6 more had been severely eroded. That's forced people to relocate as shorelines close in on their homes. It gets worse. Taro Island may be the first provincial capital on the planet that people are forced to abandon.
Oh God, look at the house. You see that? Look at the house? Oh no. Oh, I hope those people are underground.
Good evening. Outbreak. As we come on the air, tornadoes are on the ground in Oklahoma. One reported to be a mile wide at the start of what is expected to be a dangerous evening in that part of the country.
In Lawton, flash floods and high winds stranded drivers in their cars. In West Texas, pounding hail up to the size of baseballs, while this twister was spotted in Kansas. The sprawling system also spawned tornadoes across Colorado. In Arizona, Flagstaff blanketed with snow in the spring, but rain and hail nearby blamed for 2 deaths on I-40. Tonight, the storms are roaring through Oklahoma, marching east.
Hold still. Hold still.
This car in South London was swallowed up by a huge sinkhole in the road. The Vauxhall Zafira was left on the road overnight while the owner visited his brother. And when he returned the next morning, the blue car was half on the road and half in it. There was speculation that the collapse could have been due to recent heavy rain in the area.
It's believed to be one of Chile's worst environmental crises in recent years. This is the horrifying effect of a red tide, an outbreak of a deadly algal bloom. It's a naturally recurring phenomenon in southern Chile, turning seawater red and making seafood toxic. But the extent of this outbreak is unprecedented. Scientists say the El Niño weather pattern is a likely key factor, warming the ocean and creating bloom-friendly conditions. The red tide has paralysed the local fishing industry, an important source of income for many coastal communities, and has sparked angry protests by fishermen who say the government hasn't provided enough compensation.
These 24 pilot whales have all died after they wandered into shallow waters in the Gulf of California. 3 were able to be rescued, 2 adults and a calf, after being successfully directed to deeper waters. Seen here when rescue efforts were still underway, the whales died despite overnight attempts to move them away from shore. The exact reason for their migration into shallow water is unknown. Plans are being made for the whales to be buried on shore.
Uy, ¿lo ves?
Some people saw a big, bright flash in the sky overnight.
Police in Derry say they believe that a meteor streaked by around 1 this morning. And check out this video. Sid Thompson says that he captured this fireball while driving up the Everett Turnpike early this morning. The Mount Washington Observatory says the streaking light was spotted across New England.
It was brighter than a full moon. While most reports came in from Maine, there were sightings as far away as Pennsylvania and Canada. The American Meteor Society says it counted 225 witness reports from around the region.
People in the area said a loud rumbling shock. It kind of shook houses for a few seconds, and most people saw the fireball in Maine. People across the Northeast, including right here in upstate New York, well, this is actually New York City, right? Upstate's a little further up. They saw this incredible phenomenon.
Captured on camera, footage of an earthquake in Ecuador showing people scrambling on the streets as the ground beneath them shakes. 2 quakes struck the South American country, resulting in 1 death and light damage.
The 6.7 and 6.8 magnitude quakes, which struck within hours of each other, cut electricity in coastal areas and prompted the government to shut down schools nationwide as a precaution.
Just weeks after a quake in the same region caused this damage and killed hundreds of people, today's quake was not as strong, but it did collapse some buildings and cause power outages, and it raises concern about more aftershocks.
The April 16th earthquake has been followed by hundreds of aftershocks, with several registering a magnitude 6.0 or higher.
India's highest ever temperature has been recorded in the state of Rajasthan, where it reached 51 degrees Celsius in the city of Lodi on Thursday, beating a 60-year record. The heatwave has already claimed dozens of lives, with no real reprieve expected.
Helicopter rescues are underway in Sri Lanka after heavy flooding and rain has absolutely devastated the region.
Days of torrential rains have stranded thousands in the nation's worst flooding in decades.
Hundreds of thousands of people are dealing with flooding and landslides. Almost 60 people were killed and hundreds are still missing after a series of landslides covered entire villages with as much as 30 feet of mud. Many others have been forced from their homes because of all the flooding. Rain has surpassed 12 inches in parts of Sri Lanka, including the capital city of Colombo.
China's southern province of Guangdong is at the mercy of the strongest rainstorm this year. 8 people have died and another 4 remain missing during the past 2 days. All are reported in the small city of Xinyi, which has suffered the biggest rainstorm in 200 years. Rainfall exceeded 420 millimeters in just 6 hours, roughly 80% of what Beijing usually gets throughout the year.
6 people have died and 3 people remain in critical condition after a highly active volcano erupted on Sumatra Island, Indonesia, Saturday afternoon. Officials say more could still be trapped by the hot ash.
And a big mess in the Italian city of Florence this morning, where a 600-foot sinkhole opened up. Look at that, swallowing all these cars, 20 of them in total. But thankfully, nobody was injured.
An earthquake that's shaken WA's goldfields overnight has been described as being like an atomic bomb blasting underground. 3 earthquakes hit near the town of Norseman and were reportedly felt as far away as Perth, more than 700 kilometres away. The first quake was a 4.9 magnitude tremor about 6 kilometres under the surface. It struck at about 11:30 p.m. The second, an hour later, was measured at 5.2, and a 3.2 magnitude tremor hit about 1:44 this morning. Seismologists say this is the largest event in WA since a magnitude 5 earthquake struck Kalgoorlie in April 2010, leaving buildings in ruins. The tremors come barely a week after the biggest earthquake in nearly 20 years hit Central Australia, with a 6.1 magnitude tremor recorded near Uluru.
The Memorial Day weekend is off to a rough start in parts of Texas. Over the past 24 hours, more than 1.5 feet of rain has left homes and roads underwater.
Rescuers in southeast Texas spent Memorial Day pulling dozens from rising floodwaters following days of relentless rain.
Tonight, southeast Texas is getting exactly what it does not need: more rain. Severe flooding has forced more than 1,000 people to flee their homes.
Past 4 days, leaving cars submerged and parts of highways impassable.
The Brazos River in southeast Texas hasn't looked like this in more than half a century. It rose above a record 53 feet.
Parts of Texas seeing their wettest May on record.
Now at least 8 people have drowned in the Lone Star State.
At least 9 people have been killed after torrential rain in Germany's Bavaria state. Officials say many millions of euros worth of damage has been caused by extensive flooding.
People across Taiwan were shaken up today as a magnitude 7.2 earthquake struck at 1:23 p.m. off Taiwan's northeast coast at a depth of 271 kilometers.
Today's quake was described by experts as a normal release of energy, but one suggests it could be a precursor to something bigger.
Cars that look like submarines, not a scene from a Jules Verne novel, but the submerged streets of Loiret, just south of Paris, where residents have seen the heaviest late May rainfall since records began.
After 4 days of almost non-stop rain, floods in central and northern France have claimed their first victim. An 88-year-old woman was found drowned in Soupe-sur-Loing, east of Paris. The River Seine has overflowed its banks in several places, swamping transport links and forcing people out of their homes. In some regions, the equivalent of 1.5 months of rain has fallen in just 3 days, changing the landscape beyond recognition.
Yeah, this is the story everyone talking about tonight. A fireball spotted streaking across the Arizona sky really early this morning.
Pretty spectacular, and tonight NASA scientists say it was a meteor. Now check this out. It lit up the red rocks here in Sedona like it was daytime.
NASA says it was 100 times brighter than a full moon.
And then they heard a loud boom that accompanied that. At this point, we've also heard from a couple of people that say that that boom was so loud that it actually shook their windows.
You don't get meteors that bright very often. It's a fairly rare event, like a once-in-a-year event.